The 43rd call came in at 8:44 p.m. I know the exact time because I was watching the phone. It sat face up on the kitchen counter, screen lighting every few minutes like a slow alarm I'd decided not to reset, and I was eating roast chicken at my own table the way I had done every Thanksgiving for the past 6 years. Alone. By choice, by the end. Though it hadn't started that way. The calls began at 5:02 that afternoon. The first 11 were from my mother. The next 9 from my brother Derek. 3 from his wife Pamela, who had not texted me a happy birthday in 6 years. 4 from an aunt in Florida I had spoken to exactly twice in a decade. The rest were a cascade of numbers I recognized and hadn't dialed since before I learned to stop: cousins, family friends, my mother's book club friend Janet, who once told me at a Christmas party that I had a difficult energy. 43 calls in 3 hours and 42 minutes. I didn't answer a single one. What I need you to understand, before I tell you what was inside my grandmother's sealed letter, before I tell you what it cost my family to hear it read aloud at a Thanksgiving table I hadn't sat at in 6 years, is that I did not set out to destroy anyone. I set out to survive my own family. There is a difference. And for 6 Thanksgivings, eating alone, I got very good at telling myself that surviving was enough. If this is already speaking to something you've been carrying, hit the like button and subscribe before we go any further. Drop a comment and tell me where in the world you're watching from. I love knowing who's out here listening. Now let me take you back to where it started. My mother, Carol Calloway, is the kind of woman who treats love like a ledger. She tallies every sacrifice she has ever made, real or imagined, and the balance is always due. When my father left, I was 11 and Derek was 14. She spent the next 20 years making sure we understood, in precise and regular terms, what his departure had cost her, and therefore what we owed her in return. Derek paid his portion early and often. He became the man of the house at 14 without being asked. He mowed the lawn, managed the repairman, sat beside her at every school function with the posture of someone twice his age. By the time he was grown, the role had sealed itself to him permanently. Derek was the reliable one, the loyal one, the one who understood what family meant. My mother said this: Derek understands what family means, so often that I think she forgot she was saying it in front of me. I was the other kind of daughter. I asked questions she didn't want to answer. I kept records of things she preferred to let dissolve. I left for a state university at 18 on a partial scholarship to study finance, a degree my mother described to her friends as business adjacent, said with the same tone she used for weather she didn't care for. When I graduated at 22 and called her from the parking lot outside the building where I'd just signed an offer letter for $52,000 a year at Kellerman Financial Group, she said, "That's wonderful, honey. Is it close to Derek?" That was the complete conversation. For 4 years at Kellerman I built what I'd been building since I was 11, a version of myself that did not require anything to be handed to it. I made senior analyst by 26, the youngest they'd had. I did not tell my family. I had learned, by then, that achievements shared with Carol Calloway became her worries before they finished leaving my mouth. So I kept the things that mattered in a place she couldn't reach. The lake house had been my grandmother's for 30 years. Nora Calloway, my father's mother, had kept herself present in our lives after the divorce through sheer quiet determination. She called on birthdays. She mailed cards at Easter with handwritten notes, never printed messages. She drove 40 minutes to my graduations when no one else thought to come. She was the one constant in a family that treated consistency like an inconvenience it couldn't afford. When Grandma Nora's health declined and she could no longer manage the property, she transferred the deed to my mother to avoid probate complications. But she put one condition in writing, a letter she gave both Derek and me personally: the maintenance costs of the lake house would be shared equally among immediate family. Insurance, repairs, taxes. She was specific about the arrangement and specific about the reason. This house belongs to all of you. I am trusting you to treat it that way. At 27, I set up the joint maintenance account. I contributed $1,400 a month. Derek contributed $600. My mother contributed nothing. She stated the property transfer itself was her contribution. I accepted that, because it was Grandma Nora's wish that the arrangement work, and I wanted it to work. By October of that year, the account held $23,400. By November, it held zero. I pulled the statements myself. 22 separate transfers over 4 months, amounts between $500 and $2,200, all authorized by my mother's signature. I hired my accountant Rachel to trace 3 of them. They led to my mother's personal credit card. A furniture purchase for her bedroom. A payment to a travel agency for a weekend trip she'd taken with Derek and Pamela in August. A balance transfer on a store card. I called my mother on a Wednesday evening. I kept my voice level. I read her the amounts from my notes. She said, I needed it. You make good money. I said, you should have told me. She said, I'm your mother. I said, I need it back. 3 sentences. That was all it took to unravel everything and bring it crashing into the room at once. The next 10 days operated like a machine I had no access to. My mother called Derek. Derek called Pamela. Pamela called 3 aunts. The aunts called each other. By the time Derek called me on a Sunday evening, the machine had already processed the raw material into its final shape. I had accused our mother of stealing. I had threatened legal action. I was cold, calculating, and always had been. This incident was simply the first time anyone could see it clearly. None of it was true. I had asked for $23,400 to be returned to an account it had been removed from without my knowledge. That was the entire incident, start to finish. Derek's call lasted 9 minutes. He told me I was materialistic. He told me I had hurt our mother at a vulnerable time. He told me family does not keep tabs on one another, and that I had always been the one who couldn't let things go. When I referenced the account statements, he said, I don't want to hear about statements, Elise. I want you to apologize. I won't apologize for asking for money that was taken from me without my permission. 2 seconds of silence on the line. Then don't come to Thanksgiving. He said it the way you say close the door on your way out. Final. Administrative. Already decided before he called. Derek, Mom doesn't want to see you until you're ready to make this right. That's the end of it. He hung up. I sat on my couch with the phone still warm in my hand and tried to understand how asking for $23,400 had become an apology I owed. I did the math 3 times, $23,400 taken. 0 returned. 1 apology requested of the person who was owed one. I ran those numbers until I felt steady. And then I sat with the quieter fact that my brother had stood in front of full information and chosen to stand on the wrong side of it anyway. My grandmother called me at 6 o'clock on that first Thanksgiving evening. I was eating chicken soup from a can with the television on low. Her voice was the warmest thing I'd heard all day. Are you eating something real? She asked. Soup counts, I told her. Only if it has actual ingredients. Not from a packet. Can a disapproving sound? Come see me this weekend. I'll make you a proper meal. Then, after a pause, I know what happened, Elise. Your mother called me. I'd like to hear your version. I told her everything. The account statements. The transfers. Rachel's findings. The $23,400 and where it had gone. I read the numbers from my laptop because reading numbers out loud is the only way I know to be certain I'm not catastrophizing. She was quiet for a long time when I finished. Then, you did nothing wrong. I want you to hear me say that completely. Grandma, completely and clearly. You did nothing wrong. I cried for the first time since the whole thing had started. Not the performed kind. The kind that comes loose when someone says the exact true thing and your body finally believes it's safe to let go. We stayed on the phone for 2 hours. She asked about my work. She told me about the garden, what had survived the first frost, what she'd planned for spring. She described a naval history book she was reading with the full enthusiasm of someone who had no patience for people who didn't share her interests. We talked until the news came on and I realized I'd forgotten to eat anything since the soup. Before she hung up, she said, "Don't apologize for things you didn't do. That lesson took me too long to learn. You're learning it at the right time." She mailed me a card the following week. Inside, in her handwriting, "The ones who love you correctly will come back. The ones who love you conditionally will teach you what love is not." I framed it. It hangs above my desk. It has been there for 6 years. The years that followed had their own rhythm, the kind you come to know the way you know a scar. Not with pain anymore, but with the precise, careful awareness that reminds you exactly where the wound was. Every November, my family's Thanksgiving photos appeared in my Facebook feed. Derek's dining room table. The folding table they added for extra guests. My mother's cranberry sauce in the cut glass dish that had belonged to Grandma Nora. My name never appeared in a caption. My chair was never in the photo. After year 2 I stopped looking on purpose, but the posts found me anyway, shared by cousins, tagged by aunts, the algorithm delivering what it had decided I needed to see. In year 3, I left Kellerman Financial Group and opened Calloway Advisory. For clients to start, all referrals from colleagues I'd spent years proving myself to. I rented a single-room office on the 2nd floor of a building on Market Street, a space barely large enough for 2 desks and a filing cabinet. I furnished it with a second-hand chair and a lamp from the thrift store on Elm because I was putting every available dollar into the business before I put it anywhere else. I did not tell my family. Not Derek, not my mother, not a single cousin in the orbit of their group chat. I had learned from the account what happened to things left in the open. I kept this one mine. Year 4, 14 clients. A second employee. An office on the 3rd floor of the Weston building on Commerce Avenue, with 2 windows and a conference table I bought new because by then I could afford to. Year 5, 22 clients. 4 full-time employees. A revenue figure I won't share here, but one that would have surprised the woman sitting alone with her can of soup on the first Thanksgiving. Incorporation documents with my name at the top as sole owner. My mother texted me on my 31st birthday. First contact she had initiated in 4 years. The text said, "Happy birthday, Elise. Hoping you are well. Let me know if you ever want to have coffee." I read it 3 times. I put the phone down. 6 weeks later, "Derek, Mom asks about you. She's been sad. You should call her." I saved the message and did not reply to that one either. I am not telling you this to sound hard. Every year, on Thanksgiving morning, Grandma Nora called me. We talked for an hour, sometimes 2. She told me about the family dinner, who had burned the rolls, whether Pamela had brought that Jell-O salad again that nobody liked but nobody mentioned, what the grandchildren had said at the kids' table. She made me feel, across whatever distance I was maintaining, like I still belonged to something real. Even if the something real was just the 2 of us, her in the kitchen on Birch Street and me at my kitchen table with good coffee and the early light coming in. She was the bridge I kept because she was the one worth crossing. In year 5, Grandma Nora told me her heart condition had progressed. She said it the way she said everything, directly, without softening it first. The cardiologist had given her a prognosis. She was managing things. She had made arrangements for what she wanted arranged. She did not elaborate. "I'm not telling you this so you'll worry," she said. "I'm telling you because you deserve to know. You are one of the few people I trust to handle the truth without needing me to wrap it in something gentler." "I can handle it," I said. "I know. That's why I called you first." In late September of year 6, she called on a Tuesday evening. Her voice was thinner, but her words were deliberate. She said she'd met with her attorney again. She said she had updated certain arrangements. She said, "I need you to trust that I've done what is right. You'll understand when the time comes. Grandma, don't argue. You can argue with me about plenty of other things. Not this one." "Okay. Good. Now tell me about the firm. How many clients this month? She died on October 18th quietly, at home, in the garden of the house on Birch Street where she had lived for 41 years. Her neighbor Margaret found her in the mid-morning with her gloves still on and her sun hat sitting in the grass beside her, like she'd set it there herself. The cardiologist said she would not have felt it coming, which was, if you knew Nora Calloway, exactly the kind of ending she would have chosen for herself, if choosing had been an option. I went to the funeral. My mother stood on one side of the grave in a black coat and pearl earrings. Derek stood with Pamela and their children. I stood on the other side with Margaret, who pressed yellow tulips into my hands before I could say anything. I held them through the entire service. My mother and I made eye contact once. Across the casket. Neither of us moved toward the other. At the reception afterward, Derek found me near the food table. He said, she would have wanted this to be an opportunity for healing. He said it with his hands in his pockets, his administrative voice, the one he uses when he wants to sound reasonable while telling you what to do. I said, she would have wanted people to eat her good food while it's still warm. I picked up a plate. He had nothing to say to that. He left. I need you to stay with me here. Because everything I've told you, the account, the exclusion, the 6 Thanksgivings alone, the business I built in the quiet, all of it was moving toward one evening in November when my phone lit up 43 times and I sat at my table and let every call go to voicemail. What was inside my grandmother's sealed letter is the reason they called. And when you hear it, I think you'll understand why she waited until Thanksgiving to have it delivered. She chose that day deliberately. She always did things deliberately. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more stories like this one. The letter arrives in part 2, and what it says changes everything. The letter arrived at Derek's house at 4:47 p.m. on Thanksgiving Day, delivered by courier from my grandmother's attorney's office. It was addressed to the family. Instructed to be opened that day, at the table, with everyone present. My grandmother had written that instruction herself, in the same handwriting as the card above my desk. The calls started at 5:02 p.m. 43 of them. 3 hours and 40 minutes of a family finally understanding something I had known for 6 years, that Nora Calloway had been watching the whole time. That she had seen every Thanksgiving I wasn't at, every photo I wasn't in, every caption where my name was missing. And that she had, in her quiet and deliberate way, decided what to do about it. I sat at my kitchen table with my roast chicken and my glass of wine and I let the phone light up. I counted the calls as they came in, the way I had once counted account transfers, the way I had once counted the years. One by one by one. And for the first time in 6 years, I felt something I hadn't let myself feel in a long time. I felt like someone had been in my corner the whole while. I just hadn't known until now. The letter was 4 pages, handwritten on Grandma Nora's cream stationery, the kind she kept in the second drawer of her writing desk on Birch Street, the kind she used for Easter cards and notes she wanted people to keep. Her attorney, Bernard Holt, had been her counsel for 29 years. He had overseen every legal document she'd ever signed, including the original transfer of the lake house deed to my mother and the quiet, subsequent reversal of that transfer 3 months before my grandmother died in her garden. That reversal is the part my mother didn't know about. In August, 2 months before the October morning, my grandmother had asked Bernard Holt to retransfer the lake house back into her estate. She had the right to do it. She had retained a reversionary clause in the original transfer that my mother had not noticed, or had not thought to look for. Grandma Nora had put it there on purpose. She had put a lot of things in place on purpose, quietly and well in advance, the way she did everything that mattered to her. The estate, when Bernard Holt read its contents to Derek's living room at 4:47 p.m. on Thanksgiving Day, comprised the following: the house on Birch Street, assessed at $341,000. The lake house, assessed at $288,000. A savings account holding $94,200. A jewelry collection, her mother's pearl set, the sapphire earrings, a diamond ring from 1964, conservatively valued at $18,000. Total, $741,200. Left entirely to me. Not split. Not divided with consideration for other family members. Not subject to negotiation or mediation. To Elise and Calloway, sole beneficiary, with the following instruction written in Nora's own hand: what I leave to Elise is not a punishment. It is a correction. She asked for what was hers. She was shown the door for it. She built a life anyway, in silence, without my family's help or my family's attention. I have been watching. I have always been watching. This is what I saw. I know what you're thinking. Because I thought it too, sitting at my kitchen table at 8:44 p.m. watching the last of the 43 calls arrive on my locked screen. I thought, this is too much. I thought, did she mean to do this? And then I remembered the call in September. I need you to trust that I've done what is right. I remembered every Thanksgiving morning phone call for 6 years. I remembered the framed card above my desk. She had meant to do exactly this. She had been planning it for at least 2 years. Possibly longer. She had chosen Thanksgiving Day for the letter's delivery because she understood, better than any of us, what that day meant in our family. It was the one day they were all in the same room. The folding table added to Derek's dining room. The cranberry sauce in the cut glass dish. The performance at full production. She had chosen the exact moment the table was set and the tradition was celebrating itself to have a courier knock on the door. Because Nora Calloway believed that truth deserved a proper entrance. The voicemails auto-transcribed themselves and I read them in order the next morning with my coffee, the way you read a document you need to understand before you respond to it. The first wave, between 5:02 and 5:40 p.m., had been confusion. My mother, twice, Elise, call me. It's important. Derek, 3 times, there's been a mistake with the will. We need to talk. The second wave, 5:40 to 7 p.m., had been pressure. My mother's voice changed by message 7, Elise, I know you can hear this. This is not what Nora would have wanted. She was not herself at the end. You need to call me back. Derek, firmer, we're going to contest this. You should know that before you make any decisions. The third wave, 7 to 8:44 p.m., was the extended family. Aunt Roberta from Florida, this had apparently been worth a phone call at dinner time. My cousin Lynn, who had sent a heart emoji on the prayer request group chat 6 years ago. One 4-minute message from Aunt Roberta that ended with, I just don't understand how you could do this to your mother, Elise. After everything she's been through. After everything she's been through. I set the transcripts down and called Bernard Holt. He answered on the second ring. His voice was exactly as it had been at the funeral, quiet, unhurried, the voice of a man who had spent 3 decades managing other people's complicated families and was not surprised by any of them. I expected to hear from you, he said. How many times did my mother call you? 11 times between 6 and 9 p.m. yesterday. Your brother called 4 times this morning. And? The will is airtight. Your grandmother was examined by her physician in August and certified as fully competent at the time of signing. There is a notarized medical statement in the file. A brief pause. She anticipated the challenge. The recording, I said. Is it what I think it is? It is exactly what you think it is. She recorded it here in my office on September 30th. 2 witnesses, fully notarized. Her instructions were specific. It is to be played in the event any family member challenges the will, or in the event that you request it. She had sat in Bernard Holt's office in September and looked into a camera and made sure that if this room ever happened, her voice would be in it. 2 weeks before the morning in the garden. She had known. She had made arrangements, the way she always made arrangements, quietly, completely, without asking anyone's permission. Mr. Holt, I said. My family is going to request a meeting. They already have. Derek called this morning asking me to facilitate a discussion at his home. Tell him yes, I said. And tell him to make sure everyone is present. Everyone who was in the room when the letter was read. I want them all there. The meeting was set for the following Saturday, 12 days after Thanksgiving. 12 days during which my phone received a regularity of contact that told me the family machine had not stopped. It had simply shifted from volume to strategy. My mother called twice a day. I listened to every voicemail without returning a single one. By day 3, her approach had changed. She stopped asking me to call and started leaving statements. I have consulted with my own attorney. 2 days later, we believe Nora was not fully herself in her final months. Then, the evening before the meeting, I want you to know I don't blame you for this. I think you were put in a difficult position. We can fix this together. We can fix this together. 6 years of Thanksgiving photos without my face in them, and she wanted to fix it together. I saved every message. I spent the Thursday and Friday before the meeting doing what I always do when I need to be clear. I worked. Client reviews, quarterly filings, a projection report for a new account I was bringing on. I stayed at the office until 7 both evenings and drove home through the dark with the radio off. On Friday night, I sat at my kitchen table and looked at the framed card above the desk for a long time. Saturday morning I put on my best work blazer. Navy, fitted, the one I wear to close accounts. I was not going to a family dinner. I was going to a room that would try to take something from me, and I intended to be dressed accordingly. Derek's house looked exactly as it always had. Beige siding, 2-car garage, the basketball hoop in the driveway that was always slightly crooked. Cora's car was parked at the far end of the street, engine running. I had texted her 20 minutes earlier, going in. She had replied, timer set. If I don't hear from you in 2 hours, I'm knocking with a casserole. Pamela answered the door. She looked at my blazer, then at my face, and said, everyone's in the living room. She stepped aside without meeting my eyes. There were 9 people in Derek's living room. My mother in the armchair closest to the door, her chair, the power position, the one she claimed in every room. Derek on the sofa with Pamela beside him. Aunt Roberta from Florida, who had apparently decided this was worth a flight. My cousin Lynn and her husband. 2 neighbors who had been family friends for 15 years. And a man I didn't recognize who turned out to be the attorney my mother had retained, early 40s, briefcase on his knees, a look of careful professional neutrality. 9 people assembled to tell me the things that were mine were not mine. Bernard Holt arrived at 2:01 and took the chair in the corner without being offered it. He set his folder on his knee and folded his hands on top of it and said nothing. My mother looked at me when I walked in. Then she looked at Bernard. Something moved behind her eyes and went still. Derek stood. Thank you for coming, Elise. I know the situation has been, let's get started, I said. I sat in the chair across from my mother. The recalibration moved through the room like weather. 9 people adjusting to someone who had arrived taking up her full amount of space. Derek sat back down. He had prepared remarks. He used them. We asked everyone here because we believe there are serious questions about the circumstances of Grandma Nora's will. We're not trying to be adversarial. We love you. But a $741,000 estate leaving everything to one grandchild with no provision for anyone else raises real questions about whether Nora had the guidance she needed at the end of her life. He said guidance. He meant, whether I had been in her ear. Whether I had shaped the thoughts of a sick old woman. Whether what she had left behind was hers or mine. My mother was still. Hands folded, jaw slightly set. Waiting for me to respond to Derek so she could build on whatever I gave her. I didn't respond to Derek. Mr. Holt, I said. Would you introduce yourself to the room? Bernard Holt opened the folder. He spoke without looking up. My name is Bernard Holt. I have been Nora Calloway's attorney since 1995. I prepared this will. I witnessed its signing. I have a notarized medical evaluation from Nora's physician, dated August 14, certifying her full cognitive competency at time of signing. He removed a document. Copies are available to anyone who wishes to review them. My mother's attorney looked at the document from across the room. He did not move to take a copy. Derek said, "That still doesn't address the question of undue influence." "No," Bernard agreed. "It doesn't. Which is why your grandmother made a second provision." He looked around the room with the unhurried patience of a man who had been through versions of this scene many times and knew exactly how it ended. "Nora Calloway recorded a statement in my office on September 30th. It is witnessed, notarized, and legally admissible. Her instructions were that it be played in the event the will was challenged, or in the event her granddaughter Elise requested it." He looked at me. "She requested it," I said. My mother said, "What kind of statement? I'd like to hear it now." Bernard Holt produced a small device from the folder. He set it on Derek's coffee table. He pressed play. The room heard my grandmother's voice. It was exactly as I remembered it. Clear, deliberate, unhurried. A little thinner than the year before, but unmistakably her, the voice from 52 Thanksgiving morning phone calls, the voice that had said you did nothing wrong when I needed to hear it most. "My name is Nora N. Calloway. I am recording this on September 30th in the offices of Bernard Holt, in full possession of my faculties and my opinions. If you are hearing this, someone in my family has challenged what I have left behind. I expected that. I know my family. 3 years ago, my daughter-in-law Carol removed $23,400 from a joint maintenance account that my granddaughter Elise had set up and funded, at my request, to maintain the lake house property. This was done without Elise's knowledge and without her permission. When Elise asked for the money to be returned, she was called selfish. She was called materialistic. She was excluded from family gatherings for the next 6 years. I watched all of this happen. I want to be clear about that. I watched because Elise told me. I watched because I kept contact with her throughout, including every Thanksgiving morning, because I was not willing to pretend that she had been pushed out of a family she had done nothing to deserve losing. I watched my granddaughter build a financial consulting firm from 4 clients to 22 in 4 years. I watched her do this without a single dollar of family support. I watched her be excluded from holiday photos while she sat alone, because she had asked for $23,400 to be returned to the account she had funded herself. What I leave to Elise is not a punishment. It is a correction. She earned her life. She earned my trust. She earned the right to something from this family that acknowledged what was taken from her. If anyone in this room believes that is unfair, I would ask them to consider what fairness looked like 6 Thanksgivings ago. To Elise, I am sorry I could not do more while I was here. You never needed me to. But I wanted to. To everyone else, I love you. And I saw exactly who you were. Both of those things are true at the same time. The recording ended. The silence that followed was the kind that has physical weight. Not the polite silence of people waiting for the next speaker. The airless, pressurized silence of a room in which something true has been said that cannot be unsaid, cannot be reframed, cannot be walked back by anyone in it. My mother's face had gone the color of the wall behind her. Aunt Roberta had both hands pressed flat against her thighs, eyes forward. Derek was staring at the coffee table with the expression of a man doing math he doesn't want to finish. The attorney my mother had hired was very quietly closing his briefcase. I waited one full breath. Then I looked at my mother. She knew exactly who you were. 9 words. My mother opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Aunt Roberta said, very quietly, "Carol. Did you take money from Elise's account?" It's not the whole, did you take money from her account?" Silence. Derek's jaw moved. He was doing what I had watched him do my entire life, processing, calculating, deciding which way to stand when the wind changed. For the first time, the wind was blowing straight at him and there was no position that wasn't in it. "Mom." His voice was different now. The administrative tone was gone. What was underneath it was something I didn't have a name for. "Did you take it?" My mother looked at her hands. The hands that had been folded so still in her lap through the entire meeting, right up until Nora's voice filled the room. She did not say yes. She did not say no. And in a room that had just heard Nora Calloway speak from the other side of September, the silence was its own kind of answer. I picked up my bag from the floor beside my chair. I stood. I buttoned my blazer. Mr. Holt has copies of all relevant documents for anyone who needs them. I looked at the room once, not with triumph, not with contempt. The way you look at something you've finally stopped pretending isn't exactly what it is. The will stands. The estate transfers as written. I won't be entertaining any challenges. I walked to the door. I let myself out. I pulled it closed quietly behind me. Cora was at the curb before I'd made it halfway down the driveway. Passenger window already down. How long were you in there? I checked my watch. 41 minutes. And? I got in. Even from the other side of October, I said, she played it perfectly. Cora drove. I sat with my bag in my lap and watched Derek's neighborhood pass the window, the tidy yards, the basketball hoops, the folding tables all put away for winter. The ordinary surface of a street where a family had just heard a dead woman's voice describe exactly what they had done and who they were. The fallout in the days that followed was quieter than I expected, and louder in the places that mattered. Bernard Holt confirmed in writing on the Monday after the meeting, no challenge to the will had been filed. My mother's attorney had formally withdrawn from the matter. There would be no contest. My mother did not call me for 11 days. When she finally did, it was 7:30 in the morning, the time she always called when she had something difficult to say. Her voice was thin. Not weak. Thin in the way a voice gets when most of the performance has been stripped away and what remains is simply the person. I don't know how to explain the account, she said. I know that's not what you want to hear. I don't have a reason that will sound like what it was. What was it? I asked. A long silence. It was easy, she said. You've always been the easy one. The one I didn't worry about. I thought, I knew you'd be fine. I know that's not a reason. It's not, I said. I'm sorry. The words came out the way things come out when they've been held for a long time and finally set down. Not polished. Not practiced. Just said. I didn't say it was okay. It wasn't okay. I said, I heard you. And I hung up. Derek texted the following week. Not long, he had never been a long message person. Just, I should have asked questions 6 years ago instead of taking sides. I'm sorry I didn't. I read it 3 times. I replied, I know. That was all. It was enough for now. Aunt Roberta called and apologized for the group chat messages from 6 years ago, the ones she'd sent without asking me for my side. She cried through most of it. She asked if we could have lunch when she was next in town. I said yes. The attorney my mother had hired sent his invoice to her address. She paid it, $2,200 for 41 minutes of sitting in Derek's living room and quietly putting a document back in a briefcase. That is a particular kind of tax, and it was paid by exactly the right person. Bernard Holt called to confirm the final estate transfer. Before we ended the call, he said, she used to talk about you at every meeting. 4 years. She'd ask me to update the file and then she'd tell me something you'd done. A new client. A promotion. Something you'd built. A pause. She was very proud of you, Elise. I sat at my desk with the phone warm in my hand. Above me, the framed card. Her handwriting. The words I'd been living by for 6 years without knowing they were also a promise. She hadn't come back. She couldn't. But she had found a way to be present in a room she would never stand in, at a table she would never sit at, on behalf of a granddaughter who had spent 6 Thanksgivings setting her own place alone. The money was real. The property was real. But what she had actually left me was something I hadn't known I needed until I heard it come through a small device on a coffee table in a room full of people who had spent years deciding I didn't matter. Her voice. Her words. Her witness. She had seen me the whole time. The estate transfer completed on a Tuesday afternoon in late January. Bernard Holt called at 4:15 to confirm. I was at my desk reviewing a client's quarterly projection, and when I hung up I sat very still for a moment and looked out my office window at the city in winter, gray sky, bare trees, the street below moving with its ordinary Tuesday purpose. I owned a house on Birch Street. I owned a lake house. I had $94,200 in a savings account that had belonged to my grandmother and before that to her mother. I called Rachel, my accountant. The transfer went through, I said. She exhaled slowly. How are you? I'm trying to figure out what to do with a lake house. She laughed, a short, clean sound. I have ideas, she said. None of them financial. I want to tell you the honest version of what those weeks felt like. Because the honest version is not only relief. It is not only vindication. There is a particular grief that arrives when the truth finally lands in a room and everyone hears it, and that grief is this: the family you spent years trying to earn a seat at is now clearly visible as the family it always was. The recording, the silence, my mother's thin voice on the phone, none of it gave me back 6 Thanksgivings. None of it filled the chair that sat empty when I walked across the graduation stage at 22. None of it changed the morning I zipped my own gown in the mirror with a wire hanger, or called my mother from a parking lot with an offer letter in my hand and heard, "That's wonderful, honey, is it close to Derek?" You can be completely right and still grieve the thing you were right about losing. Those two truths can live in the same house, and pretending otherwise is its own kind of lie. I sat with that for a few weeks. I didn't rush through it or reframe it into something more comfortable. I just let it be what it was. In February, I drove to Birch Street. The garden was dormant, cut back for winter the way Grandma Nora always cut it back, clean, deliberate, ready for spring without looking like it. Her neighbor Margaret was at her mailbox when I pulled up, wearing the same green wool coat she'd worn to the funeral. "I thought you might come," she said. She had the spare key in her hand. She'd been looking after the house since October. She held the key out to me without a word about what it meant to hand it over, which was exactly the right thing to do. I went inside alone. The house still smelled like her, a particular combination of garden soil and the cedar sachets in the closets and the faint trace of lavender hand cream she used every evening. I walked through each room slowly. The writing desk in the second bedroom, second drawer. The kitchen with the good knives she'd kept since 1988. The back window that looked out on the garden and the birch tree she'd planted the year my father was born. In the living room, on the side table beside her reading chair, was the naval history book. Bookmark at page 247. She hadn't finished it. I picked it up. Sat in her chair. Read from the bookmark to the end. It took an hour and 20 minutes. When I finished, I set it exactly where I'd found it and sat in the winter quiet of her house for a long time. Not performing grief for anyone. Just being in a room that had held her, letting it hold me for a while. The lake house I visited in March. 3 bedrooms, a dock, the screened porch where she'd sat in early evenings during summer visits. The dock needed work, 2 planks rotted through, the railing loose at one post. I called a contractor, stood on the shore while he walked me through the scope. 4 days, $3,200 in materials. I approved it without hesitation. I ate lunch on the porch while he started on the dock. The lake was still and gray and cold, the trees bare along the far shore, a cormorant sitting on the end of a neighbor's dock doing nothing in the particular way birds do nothing when they have decided the day belongs to them. I sat there and thought, she gave me the lake house and the house on Birch Street and $94,200 in savings. But she had been giving me something else for 6 years, in every Thanksgiving morning phone call, every hour spent talking about gardens and naval history and whether my clients were paying their invoices on time. She had been giving me evidence. Evidence that I was seen. That someone in this family was paying attention to the right things. The money was real. But the evidence was what I had been surviving on. Calloway Advisory reached 27 clients by spring. I hired a fifth employee in March, a junior analyst named Tobias, 24 years old, 2 years out of school, slightly too formal in initial client meetings, with a GPA that told you everything about the years he'd spent proving himself to an audience that wasn't quite paying attention. He reminded me of no one so much as myself at that age. I gave him his first solo client review in April. He came to my office afterward to debrief, and I told him something close to what my grandmother had told me 6 years earlier at a kitchen table with the television on low. "Your work is yours," I said. "Guard it. Not from your clients. From the people who'll try to use it as evidence against you." He looked at me for a moment. "Is that from experience?" "All of it," I said. He nodded the way young people nod when something lands earlier than they expected. He was going to be fine. I could see it in the way he carried himself when he thought no one was watching, the posture of someone who had been told they were ordinary by people who weren't paying close enough attention. On Thanksgiving, 7 months after the 43 calls, 1 full year since the last phone call from Grandma Nora, I drove to the lake house. I bought a turkey and a full set of groceries. I bought the ingredients for cranberry sauce and I brought the cut glass dish from Birch Street, because it was hers and it belonged at a Thanksgiving table, and if it was going to sit at a Thanksgiving table it was going to be at mine. Margaret came. She drove the 40 minutes without complaint and arrived at noon with a peach pie that was slightly overdone on the edges, which she described as rustic. I set the table with Grandma Nora's good dishes, the ones from the second shelf of the kitchen cabinet. I cooked for 2 hours with the back door open and the November air coming off the lake, cold and clean and carrying the smell of the water and the bare trees on the far shore. We sat at the table and we talked about Margaret's garden plans for spring, about a book I'd been reading, about the contractor's repair work on the dock and whether it had held through the fall. Normal things. Small things. The kind of conversation that happens between people who've been through something together and decided, without ever saying so, to keep going. After dinner, Margaret held her wine glass and looked across the table. "She would have liked this," she said. "She planned for this," I said. Margaret smiled. "She told me, you know. About a year before she died. She said, Elise worked for everything she has and got nothing for it from this family, and I intend to correct that." She took a slow sip. She said it the way she said everything. As though it was simply the next logical step. I looked out at the lake, dark now, the dock lights doubled on the water, the dock that was mine, repaired, holding. "The next logical step," I said. Margaret nodded. "That was Nora. It is spring now. The garden at Birch Street is coming back. I can see it from the kitchen window when I check in on the house, the bulbs she planted last October pressing up through the soil exactly the way she knew they would. She planted them knowing she wouldn't be here for April. They came up anyway. That is the thing about Nora Calloway. She operated on a longer timeline than the rest of us. She planted things in the fall and trusted the ground to hold them, and the season to come, and the person she was planting for to still be standing when they broke through. I am 32 years old. I have a firm with 27 clients and 5 employees and a conference table I bought new because I could. I have a house on Birch Street with a garden waking up. A lake house with a dock that holds. A savings account that started at $94,200 in January and has been growing since. A framed card above my desk in handwriting I know as well as my own. My mother and I speak once a month now. The conversations are careful, shorter than they used to be, built on the rubble of the old structure. She doesn't redirect anymore, or she catches herself when she starts to. She asks about the firm. She asks about the lake house. We are building something different from what we had. Smaller. More honest. I don't know yet what it will be, and I've stopped needing to know in advance. Derek texted me a photo in February. His kids at the Thanksgiving table, the same folding table added to the end, his daughter holding a handmade paper centerpiece, his son making a face at the camera. He wrote, "There's a chair here for you next year, if you want it." I saved the photo. I haven't replied yet. Not out of cruelty. Out of the understanding that some doors, after 6 years, deserve to be opened slowly and entirely on your own terms. The family I spent 6 years trying to earn a seat at was never going to give me one. Not because they were entirely bad people, but because seeing me clearly would have required them to see themselves, and people only do that when the alternative costs them something. It took my grandmother's voice, from beyond a garden in October, to make the cost visible. I can't know what they'll do with that. I can only know what I did with it. I built a life they didn't fund and couldn't reach. I kept my work mine until it was something that couldn't be taken. I accepted the love that was offered correctly, from a woman in her garden, from a best friend who screamed when I got hired, from a neighbor who drove 40 minutes with a slightly overdone peach pie. I let the conditional love teach me what love was not, and I stopped discounting myself to make the wrong kind fit. The 43 calls still live in my phone's log. I've never deleted them. Not as evidence. Not as ammunition. Just as a record. 43 calls in 3 hours and 42 minutes from a family who had excluded me for 6 years, the moment they realized someone had been watching all along. She planted things in October. She trusted the ground to hold them. I'm still here. That's the whole of it. Thank you so much for watching until the very end. If this story meant something to you, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really connect with them. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. See you in the next story.